Hello, students. Welcome into this philosophy room. As you can see, I don't know if you see it in the right direction on in reverse side, but this is the famous fresco by Raffaello with the Academy of Athens. Okay, remember that you are, in my opinion, the cleverest student into the world. I mean, all the students in Liceo Porporato. And as teachers, we are doing what we can. We are trying our best. Okay, I condensed all your excellent questions into different topics, so I'm not answering specifically to specific persons, to specific students, but I'm condensing all the issues. Someone asked about a possible comparison between Comte's theory and the self-knowledge that Socrates claimed is the aim of life. Yes, we can compare it. Comte thinks that all humanity is going in the same direction as an individual, and we are all trying to achieve self-consciousness. The difference is that self-consciousness, what Comte thinks we can achieve, is a progress. We can improve and we can become something different than in the past. Uh, Many of you asked, what does the positive uh, knowledge mean? Is there a negative knowledge? No, positive has not the meaning of something which is desirable. So there's no contradiction between positive and negative. Positive means what is referring to a fact, to something that happened. If there is something happening, you can speak about a positive fact. Okay? A positive knowledge is a knowledge based on facts, on something material, something real existing, because you can touch it, you can hear it, you can smell it. Is a valid knowledge, because a valid knowledge is based on experience, isn't it determined by a form of subjectivity? That was a very good question. Can you understand it? If we have to ground the scientific knowledge on the experience of the senses, isn't that subjective? So isn't that not really valid from just from your point of view? The answer is no. Comte is thinking about a positive knowledge because that experience has been shaped by a mathematical measurement. Someone of you asked about the difference between the science in general and the scientific sociology or the social sciences. Well, physics is at that time a real science according to Comte's opinion. What we have to do now is to invent, to build from the beginning a new science whose object would be, has to be, the study of the human behavior. So, sociology can be a science at the condition of assuming the same method of physics. Can we comparing this Comte idea of progress with the naturalisms of Zola? Yes, we can. And in fact, they both were French. Because the positivism first spread and developed in France, that is why a literacy movement such as naturalism developed there, because there were writers who were agreeing with Comte in that object, in that aim, in that purpose of describing reality starting from facts rather than from feelings or from ideas. Okay, then speaking about the three stages, one of you asked, must all be completed? Does that mean that they are all equal and they have the same value? No, it doesn't. It isn't even really necessary to have all the three steps. For example, sociology, which is a new science, can develop starting directly from the third step, from the positivist step. Um, but ancient sciences, such as physics, developed from a religious point of view through a metaphysical one and then could achieve the positive one. Um, the difference between empiricism and positivism, we have already discussed this more or less by saying that positivism is a form of strong empiricism relying on mathematics. There are, into the word, facts that we have to experience with the senses, but those senses have to be corrected by mathematics. Um, what is the meaning of authoritative knowledge? There are many kinds of knowledge. For example, religion, in Comte's opinion, is a form of knowledge, but not all of them are at the same level reliable. An authoritative knowledge, an authoritative science is a positivist one. Okay, if all is a derived consequence of nature, um, why is the same? There are specific forms of knowledge considered as wrong, because all the forms of knowledge, for example, religion, are natural manifestations of the natural desire of knowing things that human beings have, but um, not all of them have the same efficacy. Not all of them have the same ability to get the point. Sorry, I just have to uh, take out something from the oven. Very good. We can go. Here we are. Okay. Someone of you asked a very interesting, intriguing question. Can we say that Comte's theory is assuming the Occam's razor of the simplicity? Yes, we can. And you are very, very clever boys and girls. How can human rights be respected without laws? Comte imagined um, a new society which is based on the evidence of all the scientific demonstrations. So, for example, we are living this coronavirus issue. All the behavior that we have to respect are not really relying on laws. We are not behaving that way because we are scared from the possibility of being fined by the police, but because we think that there are medical doctors suggesting us the best behaviors to be maintained in order to be safe. Okay? So he was projecting a society in which all the decisions were based on scientific arguments, which don't require to be imposing laws. It was more or less the same project that Plato had 2000 years ago. Are the three stages something which can be repeated? It depends. Uh, since the science achieved the positivistic level, it can go back. But this is not progress. This is a form of reverse progress. So from one specific point of view, from an objective, absolute point of view, the process is just one way. Is there a contradiction between God and a religion of humanity? No, there's not, because um, Comte is thinking about a religion without God. It's not really a religion, it's a form of spirituality which is sacralizing the scientific discoveries more than believing in a superior entity we can call God. Can we compare Comte's theory with Socrates, who had the aim of suggesting us to find ourselves? Yes, of course we can, and we discussed this a little bit before. Can his philosophy be considered as the first no, sorry. Someone can't understand if positivity is a way to determine a phenomenon or a complex analysis of it. We are not talking about positivity, we are talking about positivism. Positivism is the right method of science, so it's not a way of determining a phenomenon, but the right complex way of analyzing it. Someone asked correctly, why did Comte believe that religion was something for women and uneducated people? But first, because he was a chauvinist. So he would think that women are more primitive than men, and that men have more attitude towards modernity and towards assuming new forms of science. How can democracy fail? And how can we think that, how can we imagine that a tyrant can get power? Comte was born during the French Revolution, and the terror could some days kill more than 10,000 people at the same time. So he thought that democracy is dangerous, and that a good form of government is that one which is ruled by someone who has a scientific skill to manage to handle that aspect of the government. Can the second and the third phases exist without the first one? Well, usually not, because the culture of the people usually starts from a religious vision of the world. But we can, for example, invent a new science, such as sociology, without giving sociology any theological step. In modern society, can we still find faith? Comte thinks that faith without a fact that you can demonstrate is something primitive. We have to abandon it. You can agree or disagree with that, but that is the idea of Comte. Are there differences between empiricism and positivism, as we have already discussed a few minutes ago? Yes, there are, because positivism is a form of very strong faith in empiricism. How can we define the theological step? Someone asked. The theological step is the initial need for finding a personal, animated explanation of all the phenomena. So, for example, primitive man would consider that an earthquake is the reaction of an angry God towards a bad action we did. Is positivism The same as empiricism, okay, we discussed that. Can we link the relativity theory with positivism? Yes, we can. Modern science, I mean science who was released in the last century, uh, is more or less, at least some way, positivistic. But the real modern science, starting from the relativity theory, is beyond positivism. So, to imagine such a theory as the relativistic one, Einstein should go beyond the only need for measuring things, for counting things, and had to imagine something more, something bigger. So we can say that at the same time, relativistic theory and all the contemporary science is positivistic and post-positivistic, beyond positivism. Uh, what does sociological positivism mean? If we apply all the mathematical description of natural sciences to men and women, we have sociological science or sociological positivism. Was he atheist? Was Comte an atheist because of the behavior of the church, or just because of theoretical consideration of the possible or impossible existence of God? Both. He thought that from the moral point of view, the church is not authoritative. He also thought that um, believing in God is a primitive form of knowledge related with a primitive need to find a person under, beneath, or behind every possible fact into the world. Why had Comte such an impact on Brazil? I don't know. The only possible explanation is that Brazil was getting the independence at that time when Comte published his work. So they probably got inspiration from this book, and they were trying to give to this new country a scientific basis. I think so. Um, why mathematics first? Because mathematics is not really a science, it's a language. Mathematics is the unambiguous language we can use when describing things. When we want to describe things uh, without any ambiguity, we have to use mathematics because the language, what we are talking, is possibly ambiguous. So when you use mathematics, you can give a science the positivistic level. Thank you very much. I know that I need to improve my skills, but I'm learning. Bye bye. Kisses and smooches.